An often overlooked group in the social justice movement is trans men and women. Yet historically, trans men and women have played a key role in organizing for social justice.
Here you see me with my sisters and my brothers. You are my sisters, they are my brothers. We're all together in this fight.
Aya Damons is the founder and executive director of Safe Havens.
Well, the core of the organization is to provide housing for LGBTQ individuals, a mobile outreach unit for prevention, and also a daytime drop-in center. We also do advocacy and activism in the streets.
Doing what some might call the largest social justice movement and uprising in American history, trans men and women played a key role, but largely the focus was directed elsewhere. Here in Baltimore, the LGBTQ organization Safe Haven organized many protests in front of City Hall, the police department, demanding an end to violence to trans individuals and demanding that the city stop trying to erase the trans community completely.
Why are we just now figuring out that people aren't really paying attention? People should have been knew that every life should matter. People should have been knew that we all have a voice, we all have rights, we all have a reason why we were put on this earth.
Well, Black Trans Lives Matter was to implement out in the streets that our lives matter, that we were endangered, not only here in Baltimore City, but throughout the United States of America. For way too long, we've been victimized. Murders are at an alarming rate here and also throughout the United States of America. So we wanted to center here in our home city of Baltimore to say that we will no longer go for that at all.
Trans activists took over a widely broadcast town hall meeting to reiterate to city officials and everybody that they exist.
That's how anti-Blackness works among people of color. That's what anti-Blackness looks like. The erasure of Black trans people.
All right.
I'm here, we're here in this room. Please give us that opportunity.
Blossom.
For the first time in American history, transgender issues have been taken seriously. They have risen to the level of presidential debate.
Senator Sanders, at least 22 transgender people were killed in the United States this year, most of them transgender women of color.
Bernie Sanders answered by connecting the issue to his key policies.
What we also need for the transgender community is to make sure that health care is available to every person in this country, regardless of their sexual orientation or their needs.
Elizabeth Warren took a more intimate approach toward the subject. She said that she would go to the Rose Garden and read the names of all transgender women who died in the past year. She also said she would look at the situation of transgender women being incarcerated.
I will change the rules now that put people in prison based on their birth sex identification rather than their current identification. I will do everything I can to make sure that we are in America that leaves no one behind.
Recently in Baltimore Central booking, a trans woman, Kim Wirtz, was placed in the male cell area and found unresponsive the same night that she got locked up. In response to this, Safe Haven and Free State Justice organized a protest outside of Central Booking in which they blocked traffic for several hours.
Well, as a Black trans woman, she was my sister. She was a reflection of me. She looked like me. So what happens to her happens to me. I'm always feeling some kind of way about the injustice and violence that's happening here in Baltimore City, happening with my sisters and brothers. And sometimes we just don't have a person that's doing advocacy and activism for us and standing up for our rights. So it pushed me to do this work even more. So I'm on the forefront. I'm going to be here for a while. So this is what I do. It's my calling. November 12th, 2018, we came to Free State Justice and we asked for support. They helped us to get a 501c3 with their support. So now we're almost 3 years here and still doing the work, hitting the ground running.
A family member of Kim Wirtz, Keisha Glass, found support from Safe Haven.
My name is Keisha. I go by a few different names, but I am the niece of Kim Wirtz, also known as Toby Wirtz, who was recently found unresponsive in the Baltimore City Central Booking Facility. I have come into contact with Baltimore Safe Haven, and we were able to have a vigil for her. Not only did they share a GoFundMe, which I do believe allow us to raise a considerable amount of funds. We're still raising money. However, they organized a vigil for us, which allowed community members to come together and just kind of like share space for her in celebration of her. They also came to the memorial service. And then yesterday, we had a protest outside of the Central Booking Unit.
All we know is allegedly she was arrested without incident. That means without incident. I don't identify with any sexuality, nor do I think my sexuality should determine whether I get certain rights. My skin is black. My grandmother is white. Kim is biracial. Like, none of that shit matters. We're fucking human.
The Real News reached out to the public defender's office, who is representing Kim Wirtz and her family, and they provided us with this statement. The Real News Network also reached out to the Maryland Public Safety and Corrections Service, but they have yet to provide us with a comment. One of the organizers of the protests from Free State Justice, Jeremy Lamasters, suggested that Maryland look at Washington, D.C. jail reforms as a way in which to reform the jails in this state.
So in terms of different ways in which we can sort of achieve reform, I think that our community is looking for, there's a number of different avenues to pursue. I think one is, in specifically to incarceration and detainment, really reforming the ways in which LGBTQ folks are detained. And so, looking to other models in cities like DC, for example, where, there is an individualized assessment of folks upon their entry into a system, where they're housed in ways that are respective of their gender and gender identity, and also ensuring that they're receiving adequate health care while they are detained or incarcerated. And then even beyond incarceration, I would love to see a world where we're supporting folks before incarceration. And I think, I'm really excited to see trauma-informed care to become a priority for Baltimore City and for the state of Maryland. And I'm really hopeful that we can go further, not just addressing the entire community, but within trauma-informed care, making sure that it is responsive to the needs of LGBTQ folks, that it's really also culturally competent, and really reaching that community. I think time and time again, when we look at either programs or services either offered in housing or employment or workforce development, there's significant gaps where trans folks, specifically trans folks of color, are really left out. And so I think even beyond that, we want to make sure that the entire sort of systems of care that help prevent detainment or incarceration, reduce rates of criminalization, they're just all priorities.
We're in a city where they don't understand anything about gender dysphoria, LGBTQ individuals. We're historically behind when it comes to education, resources, and as you see, and our state's institutions as well. So reform now, but also we need to also tell the city of Baltimore, step up and do something, because right now we're seeming like the emancipation of LGBTQ non-conforming individuals. I would love to see us included in the budget here in Baltimore City. This is the first time a mayor has ever addressed us in the community and the commitment in his speeches at all. So we're looking for that push that comes from our own city within Baltimore.
I appreciate this opportunity to give some light on who she was outside of the rest in peace posters and outside of this movement that may come from this. But I want anyone who watches this to know that, like, above all, she was human. She was human like me. She was human like you. And she was a really good person. Like, she was no more perfect or less perfect than any of us. But she was good at the core. And I can think of my family. We have literally for days been just kind of bouncing off each other with countless memories of times where she has put herself on the line for us. And the one thing that I can say about her, that a legacy that will live on, is that no matter how much she had, big or small, like, she was willing to share it, you know. But like every other human being, she deserved her day in court, and she never got it. She never got to see it. She didn't even make it through the day. And that's not okay. But I know that in the midst of that, we have to continue to fight for her, and I have to continue to fight for her. Kim has had a long life, especially as a transgender woman. Many don't get the opportunity to live as long as she did at 43. But a long life of just the short end of the stick. A long life of, no matter how good she was at the core, how good she wanted to be at the core, it's still hard to find a place for her in society. It's still hard to get a job. It's still hard to find housing and get loans and get cars and get all these things when the world doesn't accept you for who you are and for who you know yourself to be. And the one thing I have learned from her is to just be me, to be present and to live in my truth, because she lived in her truth no matter what. And I think that that's the most important thing to remember about her, is that she was real.
This shit has got to stop. Let me tell y'all this. If y'all knew Kim, her energy is taking over me. Y'all see the smile? If you knew her, she would always say, when I go out, I'm going out with a bang. I didn't know it was going to look like this. But if this is what she meant, then this is just the beginning.
We will continue to follow this story as it develops. Thank you for joining this episode of Rattling the Bars.